Hi, my loves. I'm Tegan Hopper, and welcome to week one of my homeschooling vlog. So, one of the main intentions of this channel is to be sharing what I'm passionate about in the realms of spirituality, philosophy, guided meditations, energy attunements, all that juicy goodness. And then the other aspect and desire behind this channel is to do a homeschooling vlog because I am a very multi-passionate, multifaceted person. And at the moment, one of the most expansive perspectives I've been able to shift into is that I do not have to sacrifice one area of my life for the other. I can actually hold all of it. I can hold all that I desire and I don't have to. I don't have to hold it all, but so long as it feels good, I will honor my passions and I will honor my joys and I will turn up for that. So, this aspect of the channel, the homeschooling vlog, with my intention being to do one weekly video updating you on my journey as I suppose, first time homeschooler of my three beautiful healthy, energetic boys. My eldest son is almost 6 years old. He'll be 6 years old in about a month. And in the traditional realm, he would have been going to a school, to start kindergarten here where we live. However, we have chosen to homeschool, which I'm really excited about, and I'm going to share with you in this video, a little bit about why we've chosen that, a little bit about my background in regards to schooling and education, and then just some of our intentions, for homeschooling going forward. So, yeah, my eldest is six, almost. My second born son is four, and he will be turning five in the second half of this year. And my youngest son has only just turned one. So I've got an almost 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And of course, we will not be homeschooling the 1-year-old right now, but we're all home and we're all getting to enjoy this experience together. So, why homeschooling? Now, I feel like I have to tie this bit of information in with my background because it's quite an interesting combo. I am by trade. I'm a teacher. I'm a primary school teacher. I finished high school. I went to university. I got my degree as a primary school and early childhood educator. My desire was always to be a primary school teacher. I think that desire for me really ignited when I was in primary school myself. I remember being in year five and we had this really beautiful teacher. Her name at the time was Miss Black. And shout out Miss Black. That's not her name anymore. She got married since, but I'm not sure what her name is now. But I remember going to school at that time in year five and just like loving it so much. She created an environment where it just felt like so much fun. And so at that time, I knew that I wanted to be a teacher and I wanted to make learning as fun for children as she had made it for me. And so that kind of begun that desire for me. And I never really swayed from that path. There was two things. This is pretty interesting. There were two things that I always knew that I wanted from a young age. The first one was to be a mum. I always knew that deep down I wanted to be a mother and I wanted to raise my children. And I remember I used to have like visions in my head where like I would be at home with all my children and some would be school age and some would be younger and I'd be living out on a farm. I don't know why I always had that farm vision in my head. And I'd be raising my children. And in my vision, my children that were school age, it was like, it wasn't school holidays. It was like we were just there living this beautiful family-centered life. And I just always saw that vision, and that was what I wanted. That's also what I've manifested. But we'll get into that more later. So that was one thing that I always knew I wanted. And then the second thing that came was to be a teacher. So finishing high school, like I said, I went to uni, I got the degree. I went straight into a job at a beautiful school that I still have the opportunity to go and work at. And I love the staff there. I love the children there. It was such a beautiful experience. So I'm absolutely not anti-school. Like I'm not anti-school. I actually really enjoyed school, particularly primary school as a child. But, having my own children and my own personal beliefs and values, the older my kids got, the more I began to feel conflicted about sending them to school. I feel like I know that a lot of women go through this, that once you have your first child, you can't imagine sending them somewhere outside of your home and your care. It's like it feels like you're splitting yourself to have to put them in care to go back to work. And that's definitely how I felt, at least with my firstborn. I did go back and start doing some teaching here and there when he was about 10 months old. And I was so blessed that my mum and my mother-in-law had stepped up to help take care of him so that I could do a couple of teaching days here and there. But it was like suddenly my passion for teaching had started to simmer, and my passion for being with my son and raising him and getting to do all those delicious things with him really started to ignite. And, it was actually a friend of mine who started talking about how she might like to homeschool her daughter, that even kind of brought that concept to the forefront for me. I guess I had never even considered homeschooling. It felt really like out there and strange, if I'm being honest. Like, and especially coming from a perspective of like, I am a school teacher. I teach in school settings. And so, the thought of homeschooling was really foreign and really strange. And like, I didn't really know anything about it, to be honest. But my dear friend, she had started considering that as a path she might like to take for her daughter. And at the time I was like, I don't think it's for me, but it's very interesting. And then, of course, so like so many things in my life, once the seed is planted, it just continues to grow and grow and grow until it becomes this full-grown tree that I cannot ignore. It is there in my psyche, in my consciousness, just like, look at me and look how vibrant and prosperous this option is. Look how nourishing this option is. Look how beautiful it is. So, that had started that process for me, but it felt like something that was just not attainable. It felt like something that was like, a dream. In fact, I was at a social gathering. It was at a friend's child's birthday party when my eldest was probably almost 3. He was almost 3 years old at the time. And when I was talking to a few of the women there, they were beginning to talk about school because some of their children were getting to that age. And they asked me, well, like, where would you send your son, who was, like I said, I was almost 3. So I wasn't even ready to have that conversation. And I remember saying, look, I actually don't want to think about it because I was just like not wanting to think about the thought of having to send him to school, because he was my baby still. But also, I remember saying distinctly, and I said this multiple times to multiple people, in an ideal world, I would love to homeschool my son. And then I would always probably follow that sentence up with a but, like, but X, Y, and Z. It was just something, like I said, that didn't really feel fully attainable at that time. But I knew that it was something that I wanted. And I mean, again, it's what I've manifested because we've been doing like homeschooling, what you would consider to be homeschooling stuff here and there, but we're officially in our registration period now. It has begun. So it's pretty incredible and one of those beautiful moments of like gratitude that you can reflect upon, like, wow, look at this beautiful manifestation that has come to fruition. But something that I'm also so grateful for didn't happen immediately because this is at least my experience that when I have a desire arise, especially something that feels like it's outside of my comfort zone or something that it feels really expansive and stretches me, I have to then face all the resistances and fears that I have to the fulfillment of that desire. So if I were to have a desire and then it were to manifest instantly, it would probably be quite overwhelming to my body, to my nervous system, to my everything. Because it's a completely new frequency we're stepping into. And like I said, as soon as I have a desire that's really expansive, I suddenly then almost attract reflections of any fear I have around that desire, of any resistance I have to the fulfillment of that desire, or of all my worries and doubts. So that way I can go through each one and really diffuse it and sit with it and see where the fear is stemming from and then recreate or rather alchemize it to be more aligned with the truth of my inner being, of, the life that I'm living. So I'll probably go through in a future video more of the fears and worries and doubts and resistances that I had that came up, how they were reflected back to me, and how I navigated them. Because it would be an absolute lie for me to say, oh yeah, I had a desire to homeschool and no, I knew it was going to be fine. Like I was completely in trust with it. I wasn't worried about anything. I'm not worried. I was never worried about this aspect, none of that would not be true. Of course, I had natural resistance to it, but I know not to trust any thought or story that A makes me feel like shit and B is based in fear. So that's one aspect of it. So, as I said previously, I am not anti-school. And I had a good experience schooling. I know that there are a lot of people who choose to homeschool that did not have a good schooling experience. And I know that, everyone has their own experience, their own story, and their own beliefs and truths. But for me, what was true once I had my children, and like I said, I had that desire come through to homeschool, was I see so many adults who get to a point in their life. I was one of these people too, who did all the things that I believed you are meant to do. All the things that I was taught that you are meant to do, like ticking the boxes, like finish school, go to uni, get the job, build the house, marry, like have kids, like, all the things that are kind of like, oh, if these are good things to do, this is what you should do. And of course, I don't regret any of those things at all. You can get to a point where you start to question, well, wait, who actually am I? You know, what do I actually want? What actually feels true to me? And I feel like I speak to a lot of adults who feel disconnected from their truth, who feel disconnected from almost like an awareness of who they are and an understanding of themselves and a deep connection with themselves. And what I felt I wanted to give my children in this life, what felt so activated for me was that I want to be able to give them the gift of trusting themselves, of following their passions and interests and expanding in those areas rather than following a set of learning programs that might not align with their interests or passions. I completely understand why the education system can be structured in the way that it's structured, particularly when you are trying to teach certain outcomes and content to a large group of children, but I just knew that I could give my kids the gift of learning the way that they learn best or that serves them the most. And, you know, honoring what they're innately interested in and what are innately passionate about and driven to learn more in, and allow their interests and their desires to guide the learning. And I know that there are ways to make them meet the outcomes as well. I definitely believe that there are fundamental, um, English and maths and other concepts that are essential and that allow us to thrive. But I know that that's just like scraping the surface of what is possible. And I genuinely believe I can give my children the opportunity and the ability to thrive in deep connection with who they are and with what they want to create in this world. Because, once you leave school and, you know, you're out in the real world, you realize that no one has any idea what they're doing. If you had this idea that adults knew what they were doing, you're suddenly like, oh shit. No, they don't. No one does. But B, to give my children that almost not a head start, but to give them the gift of knowing how to trust themselves, knowing how to follow their passion, knowing how to make mistakes and learn through failure. And then also to transform their belief of failure, because you can't fail. You really can't. Every mistake or, what you could perceive of as failure is actually the path to success. So there's so much more I could say on this topic, but for now, I feel like that kind of hits the nail on the head, or at least scratches the surface of, why we have chosen to homeschool our children. This is a huge learning journey, not just for my children, obviously, but for me. I will say, so my background, I want to touch on my background a little bit. So as I said, I've mentioned this like twice already. I am a primary school teacher and an early child care educator. I didn't go into early child care at all after completing uni, but my bachelor in education covers both primary school and early child care. So primary school is obviously from kindergarten to year 6. It's all the KLAs. It's yeah, I mean, I love it. It's a lot of fun. It's obviously not as strongly where my passion lies anymore in teaching in a school setting. But what I'm finding, so this is week 1 of my video, and our registration period has just begun by a couple of days, and we actually have all spent the last week feeling a bit unwell. So we haven't like gone into the deep dive yet, which we will be starting tomorrow, which I'm really excited about. But what I'm finding is that I'm totally overdoing everything. Like, I'm totally over preparing, over organizing, over structuring. But I don't judge myself in that. I don't feel any like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. Because for me, this is also an unschooling, I guess, an unlearning process, because I've learned how to teach in one arena. And now I'm not only learning how to teach in a different arena, but I'm learning how to surrender. I'm learning how to learn. I'm learning how to allow my children to guide me as much as I guide them. One perfect example of this, and I shared this on my Instagram page, A Hopeful Handful, which also shares a part of our homeschooling journey. One perfect example of this is that we were sitting on our deck, playing with our like cars on the car mat, and then my children just started randomly launching the cars off of the deck. And then they were like getting excited because they were seeing how far they could launch them. And they were getting excited when one was getting launched further than the other and making comments about, oh, mine's has gone farther than yours. And then I suggested we had some cardboard nearby, and I suggested we put the cardboard as a sort of a ramp. And if we let it go from the top of the ramp to see how far each car goes. And then we started talking about whether the car was rolling or sliding or bouncing. So this all ties into a science unit that's early stage one. And why was it rolling or sliding? Because it had wheels. What was the shape? So this all ties in with a science unit. This all ties in with mathematics. And then we were measuring the distances of the cars and comparing lengths. So this ties in with mathematics, obviously, and comparing how far they had gone. So this kind of continued. And this was just an experience we were having of just playing, because often in the mornings we'd like to go outside and sit on the deck, and I'd have my cacao and they would sit and play, and we'd enjoy a quiet morning outside together. And this was just part of that play that evolved into that. And it was so fun to see in that moment how, when I allowed myself to be led by their interest in that time, the learning was so authentic and so natural. And because there was a real life contextual experience they were having, they really took in that learning. It wasn't just a piece of paper and we're going to learn this, now do this worksheet, which nothing wrong with that. But, they were really able to have an experiential learning opportunity just through play. So that's just one example. Anyway, I feel like this video's been going for a long time now, but that was just a bit of an introduction to, a bit of why we're homeschooling, what my background is, and just some intentions I have going forward. But, my intention with this vlog is to turn up weekly to share with you some of the uh, things that we're learning, some of the challenges, some of the blessings, all the invitations that are being gifted to us through this journey. I can also share with you tips and tricks and resources and learning experiences. And if there is anything in particular that you yourself would be interested in hearing about, please comment below, because I would love to make this vlog as interactive as possible. And if you are yourself are homeschooling, also comment below. So I would love to know, where you're located, how many children you have, what type of experience you're having, and maybe you're not even homeschooling. Maybe it's just something you're thinking about. Whatever your story is, pop it in the comments, because I would love to read it. I would love to interact with you, and I would love to be able to create and share more that you would be interested in hearing and receiving. So like this video if you like this video, subscribe to my channel to be notified when these videos come out weekly, and have a magical now. All my love.